Hello and welcome back. My name is Nathan House and I am with the Church of Christ in Houston, California. And if you could like or subscribe to this video, that would be great. We're going to be back looking and considering Joshua. We kind of introduced briefly the book of Joshua last time. Today, I kind of want to look at the man Joshua himself. You're introduced to Joshua in the book of Exodus. So in Exodus chapter 17, there was this complaint by the people about water, and they began to question whether God was among them. And so in Exodus 17, verse 7, actually verse 6 and 7, it says, "Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it." Verse 7, "And he called the name of that place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarreling of the people of Israel." Watch this. "Because they tested the Lord." How are they testing the Lord? The people of Israel were asking the question, is the Lord among us or not? I find it interesting that this question of the Lord's presence comes right before Joshua's first big role. Joshua now will become a warrior. And so as we look at this today, we're going to notice a few different titles that we're going to give to Joshua. And the first one is the warrior aspect. Joshua was a warrior. It says, verse 8, "Then Amalek came and fought with Israel. So Moses said to Joshua, 'Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek.'" Verse 10, "So Joshua did as Moses told him. Whenever Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed." So Moses is obviously the one still in charge, but Joshua was the man hands on the ground, battling the enemies of Israel. He was the one who was down there in the trenches, so to speak. We come to verse 14. "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, and that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven.'" Verse 15, "And Moses built an altar and called the name of it, 'The Lord is my banner,' saying, 'A hand upon the throne of the Lord. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation.'" They had questioned whether the Lord was among them here in chapter 17, verse 7. And so something that I think is interesting and important to note, in the life of Joshua, God repeatedly demonstrates his presence through victories. And I think this is really interesting because here we're introduced to Joshua the first time, and Joshua here again takes on this role as a warrior. And how does God demonstrate his presence? They asked the question in verse 17, chapter 17, verse 7, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Chapter 17, verse 8 and following, God demonstrates his presence through a victory. And so in the life of Joshua, this becomes a repeating theme. Hop over to the book of Numbers, and we read in chapter 13, I spelled it wrong there. Numbers chapter 13, that the Lord was sending spies into the land of Canaan. We remember the story. 12 spies were sent in. 10 of the spies came back out, and 10 of the spies said, "We cannot take the land. The people there are great. They're giants. Their cities are fortified. We cannot do it." And so the 10 spies who went in, 2 of the spies that go in, Joshua and Caleb, they come back out and they report. So the 10 spies report, "We can't take it." But Joshua and Caleb come out and they say, "We can take the land." And again, a big part of the deal in the book of Joshua is there is this land promise. And I know we're not yet in Joshua, we're looking at Numbers, but there is this promise God gave to Genesis to Abraham. Genesis 12, Genesis 15, we looked at last time. The promise is given to Abraham about a land. The promise is repeated to Isaac, repeated to Jacob, repeated in the book of Deuteronomy. So there is this land promise, and Joshua and Caleb believe the promise. And Joshua and Caleb believe they can be victorious. Why do they believe they can be victorious? Why was Joshua victorious in Exodus 17? Because the Lord was with him. Why do they believe they can be victorious here? Look at what it says. Look at verse 9. "Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they are bread for us." Why is that the case? Their protection is removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. So why was it that Joshua and Caleb were confident in the victory? Because God demonstrates his victory, especially in the life of Joshua so many times. God demonstrates his presence, I should say, through victory in the life of Joshua. And Joshua was once again confident of this victory because he knew God was with him. So we see, first of all, Joshua was a warrior. Second of all, we see Joshua was a spy. He was confident as a warrior because God was with him. He knew God was giving him a victory. He was confident as a spy going into the land of Canaan that they as a nation would be victorious. Why was he confident that they would be victorious? Because he understood God was with him. So then we come into the book of Joshua itself, and we could ask the question as we kind of just start to turn over there, why will Joshua be confident? Why will Joshua be confident in victory in the book of Joshua? It will be for the exact same reason Joshua was confident in Exodus 17. It's for the exact same reason Joshua was confident in Numbers 14. He was confident because the Lord was with him. So in Joshua chapter 1, God speaks to Joshua, and Joshua is given this commission by the Lord. And so over and over, God calls Joshua to be strong and courageous, right? Look here, beginning in verse 3. So verse 2, he tells Joshua, my servant is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, you and all this people, into the land that I am giving them. So once again, we see the land promise, just like we talked about last time. Every place the sole of your foot will tread upon, I have given you, just as I promised to Moses. So then he tells them the land that he has promised. And again, we saw this promise all the way to the river Euphrates, was mentioned in Genesis 15, verse 16. We saw that last time. Verse 5, no man shall stand before you all the days of your life. Why is that the case? Why is no one going to be successful standing in front of Joshua, stopping Joshua from being successful? Why not? Just as I was with Moses, look at this, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you. So why was Joshua here? We haven't seen his confidence yet, but we know he's going to be confident, don't we? Because Joshua is a confident man. Why is Joshua confident? Because he knows the Lord is with him. How does God demonstrate his presence in the life of Joshua? Through victories. And so he tells Joshua, I will be with you. I will not leave you nor forsake you. So be strong and courageous. And again, Joshua could have been discouraged, right? Moses is dead. Moses, the servant of the Lord, is dead. Moses is gone. Joshua is now supposed to lead these people who have been in the wilderness for 40 years. He's supposed to lead them into this land where there is giants, where there's fortified cities. So is it reasonable from a human standpoint to possibly be a little fearful? But God tells him, be strong and courageous. I'm going to be with you just as I was with Moses. I'm not going to leave you or forsake you. What a promise that we see echoed throughout scriptures, isn't that? Quote in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5. I will not leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land. Again, notice this promise aspect that I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Do all that I commanded. Don't turn from it, that you may have success. So again, how was Joshua going to be successful? When he was obedient. And so again, we see something else very important here. Joshua's success was determined by his obedience. And so we have this promise that is given, and it is conditioned upon obedience. But Joshua is told by God to be strong and courageous. And then again, look at verse 9. Do not be dismayed. Why not? For the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So the third title that we're going to give to Joshua here is that Joshua will become a conqueror. So he was a warrior in Exodus 17. He was a spy in Numbers 13 and 14. And he is a conqueror in the book of Joshua. And again, how does God demonstrate his presence in the life of Joshua? God demonstrates his presence in the life of Joshua through victories. Let's go to one final title that's given to Joshua that I think is perhaps the greatest of all of these titles. You know, Moses is called something very unique in Scripture. Moses is called the servant of the Lord. And in fact, in Joshua chapter 1, verse 1, it said Moses, the servant of the Lord, was dead. But Joshua is not called this throughout the book of Exodus, throughout the book of Numbers or Deuteronomy, or even throughout the book of Joshua. Not until the very end of the book of Joshua that this wonderful title is given to Joshua as well. The same title that was given to Moses is now given to Joshua. After these things, Joshua the son of Nun, look at this wonderful title, the servant of the Lord, died, being 110 years old. Of all the titles that was given to this great man Joshua, of all the titles that we could give to him as a warrior, as a spy, as a conqueror, perhaps nothing is greater than this. Joshua was a servant of the Lord. And so there are some lessons that we can learn from the life of Joshua. The first and most significant lesson from the life of Joshua is his faithfulness. The faithfulness of Joshua is seen that he was a faithful assistant of Moses. Exodus 33, we see this aspect of this title. We see in Exodus 17, verse 10, Joshua did as Moses told him. We see he was a faithful assistant to Moses. He was a faithful spy that reported and came back and said, we can do this. Why? Because God is with us. He was a faithful servant of the Lord. After these things, again, Joshua 24:29, he was called a servant of the Lord. So he was faithful. Why was Joshua able to accomplish so much in his life? Why was he so courageous? Why was he a great warrior, a great spy, a great conqueror, a great servant? Because he understood the Lord was with him. And the Lord demonstrated his presence in the life of Joshua through victories. Joshua accomplished great things in his life for God, for the people of Israel. And begs the question, what can we accomplish? What can we accomplish if we're faithful to God? If we believe in his promises? If we understand the Lord's presence in our life? What can we accomplish? Let me suggest to you that we can accomplish great things. Thank you for your time. You have a great day, and God bless.